It all started, as these cosmic mishaps often do, with a grand and entirely superfluous declaration of dominance. Aboard the Omnithraxis, a starship bearing an uncanny resemblance to a teapot teetering atop a dinner plate, High Commander THCK of the Kian Empire addressed his assembled crew. He gestured dramatically towards a holographic display of Earth, a swirling blue and green sphere, and proclaimed it a backwater world inhabited by unsophisticated life forms who committed the culinary sin of enjoying pineapple on their pizza. Conquering them, he assured his crew, would be a mere formality. The bridge erupted in obligatory cheers, not out of genuine enthusiasm, but due to strict Kvian protocol. They prided themselves on their professionally displayed zeal. Besides, no one could recall a single instance of a planet successfully repelling their mighty empire. The CLVI fleet possessed technology so advanced it required daily recalibration to prevent it from accidentally unraveling the mysteries of the universe. With the characteristic hubris of an empire boasting an unblemished record of conquest, the Omnithraxis plunged towards Earth's atmosphere. It was at this precise moment that their meticulously crafted plan began to unravel. The initial indication of trouble was the turbulence, not the typical fasten your seatbelt variety, but the sort that prompted the ship's AI, Cliff, to suggest, in its soothing monotone, a re-evaluation of their life choices. The Kvians dismissed it as an atmospheric quirk, even as powerful gusts began buffeting the ship like a disgruntled toddler attempting to topple a cookie jar. "Steady as she goes," barked Commander THCK, his grip on his command chair tightening to a point that bordered on strangulation. It's raining sideways, sir," cried Lieutenant Fiesnar, peering anxiously out the viewport. "But rain can't go sideways, unless, though, great universe, what is that asterisk?" That in question was a hailstone, roughly the size and shape of a comfortable sofa. It collided with the ship's hull with a resounding thud, leaving an indentation that bore an unsettling resemblance to a smiley face. Undeterred, they pressed on. Kians, after all, did not retreat, they advanced, backwards. By the time the Omnithraxis finally landed in a Kansas cornfield, or what was left of it after being bombarded by lightning, sudden whirlwinds, and what one ensign swore was a flock of mocking geese, the ship was in a sorry state. Scorch marks marred the hull, the antenna drooped like melted cheese, and the crew's morale had plummeted somewhere between mild disappointment and existential despair. They had, however, landed. They remained, in their minds, the superior species. All that was required was to cow the local inhabitants into submission. As the landing ramp descended, THCK mentally rehearsed his speech, "Fear not, Earthlings. Your assimilation will be swift and painless. Resistance is futile. Surrender is inevitable. And pineapple is an abomination upon pizza." Thwack! A gust of wind, carrying what appeared to be half the field's worth of topsoil, smacked him squarely in the face the moment he stepped onto Earth. The only humans in the vicinity, a farmer named Earl and his canine companion, Crumpet, observed the spectacle from a safe distance. Earl, munching on a sandwich, muttered, "Well, I'll be aliens." Crumpet barked in agreement. Back on the Omnithraxis, Lieutenant Fiesnar nervously reviewed their weather data. "Sir," he stammered, I don't think this planet likes us." "Don't be absurd," THCK snapped. "Planets don't have preferences." The data, however, painted a different picture. The weather seemed to be specifically targeting their ship. Storms materialized out of thin air, tornadoes spun menacingly in their direction before vanishing just as quickly, and hailstones struck with the precision of a seasoned marksman. THCK shook his head in disbelief. "This is a minor setback," he declared. "Deploy the crack." Another lightning bolt struck the ship, frying their communication array. Cliff chimed in, with the enthusiasm of someone reading their own resignation letter, "I recommend immediate evacuation to an orbit not governed by malicious weather systems." THCK glared at the AI. "I will not be defeated by water vapor and wind." Meanwhile, Earl watched as the aliens scrambled back into their ship, only to re-emerge moments later with strange-looking devices, which they began setting up in the field. "What do you reckon that is?" he asked Crumpet. Crumpet barked. Earl nodded. "Yep, probably a weather machine." It was, of course, nothing of the sort. It was an atmospheric neutralizer, a device designed to, in theory, pacify the weather. Instead, it triggered a localized thunderstorm directly above the ship. Fiesnar, drenched and thoroughly miserable, turned to THCK. Sir, permission to file a formal complaint against this planet? Denied. THCK roared, as another bolt of lightning zapped what little dignity they had left. With the ingrained arrogance of a consistently victorious empire, the Omnithraxis descended into Earth's atmosphere. This marked the beginning of their troubles. The first hint of problems arose with the turbulence. This wasn't the usual "please secure your belongings" type of turbulence, but something far more severe, the kind that prompted the ship's AI, Cliff, to calmly suggest in its usual monotonous tone that they might want to rethink their current life path. The Kvians disregarded this as a simple atmospheric anomaly, even as powerful winds started to batter the ship back and forth like a frustrated child trying to knock over a jar of cookies. "Maintain course," yelled Commander THCK, his knuckles white as he gripped his command chair with a death grip. "It's raining sideways, sir," exclaimed Lieutenant Fiesnar, his face pressed against the viewport. "Sideways rain? That's impossible, unless, oh, for the love of the cosmos, what asterisk is asterisk that?" That turned out to be a massive chunk of ice, approximately the size and shape of a love seat. It slammed into the ship's exterior with a deafening boom, leaving a dent that oddly resembled a smiling face. Unfazed, they continued their descent. Kians, by nature, did not retreat, they only advanced, albeit sometimes in reverse. By the time the Omnithraxis finally touched down in a Kansas cornfield, or what little remained of it after enduring a barrage of lightning strikes, sudden, violent gusts of wind, and what one junior officer swore was a flock of cackling geese, the ship was in rough shape. Burn marks scarred the hull, the antenna drooped like a piece of melted cheddar, and the crew's spirits had sunk somewhere between mild dissatisfaction and complete despair. They had, nevertheless, made it to the surface. In their own estimation, they were still the superior beings. Subduing the local populace was all that remained. As the landing ramp lowered, THCK practiced his speech internally: "Do not fear, inhabitants of Earth. Your absorption into our empire will be efficient and merciful. Resistance is pointless. Surrender is your only option. Also, pineapple does not belong on pizza." Asterisk thwack, asterisk a powerful gust of wind, laden with what appeared to be half the field's soil, hit him directly in the face as he stepped onto Earth. The only human witnesses, a farmer named Earl and his loyal canine companion, Crumpet, watched the scene unfold from a prudent distance. Earl, chewing on a sandwich, remarked, "Well, I'll be aliens." Crumpet barked in agreement. Aboard the Omnithraxis, Lieutenant Fiesnar anxiously examined their meteorological readings. "Sir," he stammered, "it appears, this planet may not be particularly fond of us." "Nonsense," THCK snapped. "Planets don't have feelings." The data, however, suggested otherwise. The weather pattern seemed to be singling out their vessel with unsettling accuracy. Storms appeared out of nowhere, tornadoes formed and spun menacingly towards them before abruptly vanishing, and hailstones pelted the ship with unnerving accuracy. THCK shook his head in disbelief. "This is just a minor inconvenience," he declared. "Deploy the crack, a lightning strike hit the ship, disabling their communication systems." Cliff, speaking with the weary tone of someone reading aloud their own notice of termination, interjected, "I advise immediate relocation to an orbit beyond the reach of these aggressive weather patterns." THCK glared at the AI. "I refuse to be defeated by airborne moisture and moving air." Meanwhile, Earl watched as the aliens scrambled back into their ship, only to re-emerge moments later carrying oddly shaped equipment, which they proceeded to set up in the field. "Whatcha think they're up to?" he asked Crumpet. Crumpet barked. Earl nodded. "Yeah, probably some kind of weather control thingy." It was, naturally, nothing of the sort. It was an atmospheric stabilizer, a gadget designed, theoretically, to calm the weather. Instead, it generated a concentrated thunderstorm directly over the ship. Fiesnar, soaked to the bone and utterly dejected, turned to THCK. "Sir, I request permission to formally lodge a complaint against this planet. Request denied. THCK bellowed, as another lightning bolt zapped away what little pride they had left. Back on the Omnithraxis, conditions were deteriorating rapidly. The interior of the vessel now resembled a poorly designed water park, with rivulets of rainwater seeping through cracks in the hull and gathering on the command deck. Cliff, ever unhelpful, announced, warning, humidity levels have surpassed optimal parameters for maintaining crew morale. Recommend deployment of dehumidifiers or complete withdrawal from this planet. They had, however, touched down. They still considered themselves the dominant life forms. Subduing the local population was the next step. As the landing ramp extended, THCK mentally reviewed his planned address. Inhabitants of Earth, do not be afraid. Your integration into our empire will be swift and merciful. Resistance is pointless. Surrender is your only recourse. Furthermore, pineapple is an unacceptable pizza topping. Wham! A forceful gust of wind, carrying what appeared to be half the field's soil, struck him squarely in the face the instant his foot touched earth. The only human witnesses, a farmer named Earl and his dog, Crumpet, observed the unfolding spectacle from a safe distance. Earl, taking a bite of his sandwich, commented, "Well, I'll be aliens." Crumpet barked his concurrence. Aboard the Omnithraxis, Lieutenant Fiesnar nervously checked their atmospheric readings. "Sir," he stuttered, I believe this planet is expressing its displeasure with our presence." "Ridiculous!" THCK snapped back. Planets are incapable of holding opinions. The collected data, however, suggested otherwise. The weather pattern seemed to be specifically targeting their spacecraft. Storms appeared from nowhere, tornadoes materialized and swirled menacingly towards them only to disappear abruptly, and hailstones bombarded the ship with an unsettling precision. THCK shook his head in disbelief. "This is a trivial obstacle," he declared. "Deploy the crack, another bolt of lightning struck the Omnithraxis, short-circuiting their communication systems. Cliff interjected, with the weary tone of someone reading aloud their own termination notice, "I advise an immediate relocation to an orbit outside the influence of these hostile atmospheric conditions." THCK glared at the AI. "I will not be vanquished by condensed water and gusts of air." Meanwhile, Earl observed the aliens scrambling back into their ship, only to re-emerge carrying strange-looking devices, which they began setting up in his field. "What in tarnation are they doing?" he asked Crumpet. Crumpet offered a bark. Earl nodded. "Yeah, probably some kind of weather contraption." It was, predictably, nothing of the sort. It was an atmospheric harmonizer, a device designed, in principle, to stabilize the weather. Unfortunately, it instead created a highly localized thunderstorm directly above their ship. Fiesnar, soaked to the skin and completely demoralized, turned to THCK. "Sir, I request permission to submit a formal complaint about this planet's behavior." "Request denied." THCK yelled, as another lightning bolt zapped away the last vestiges of their dignity. The collected meteorological data, however, clearly contradicted THCK's assertion. The weather phenomena appeared to be specifically and persistently targeting their unfortunate vessel. Storms materialized seemingly out of thin air, tornadoes spun menacingly in their direction before abruptly vanishing as if playing a cruel cosmic joke, and hailstones continued to pelt the ship with the unnerving precision of a highly skilled sharpshooter. THCK shook his head, refusing to accept the evidence before his eyes. "This is a minor inconvenience, nothing more," he declared with forced confidence. "Deploy the crack, yet another lightning bolt, seemingly summoned by the very words he spoke, struck the Omnithraxis, effectively frying their communication array. Cliff, the ship's AI, chimed in with the weary resignation of someone reading aloud their own termination notice. "I strongly advise an immediate evacuation to an orbit not under the influence of these, let's call them uncooperative weather systems." THCK glared at the AI with unconcealed frustration. "I will not be defeated by a combination of atmospheric moisture and gusts of wind," he roared. Meanwhile, Back on terra firma, Earl observed the aliens scrambling back into their peculiar ship, only to reappear moments later carrying strange, oddly shaped devices, which they proceeded to set up in the middle of his cornfield. What in the Sam Hill are they up to now? He wondered aloud to Crumpet, his faithful canine companion. Crumpet offered a noncommittal bark in response. Earl nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, probably some kind of fancy weather-manipulating gadget, he concluded. It was, to put it mildly, not a weather-neutralizing device. It was, in fact, an atmospheric stabilizer, a piece of technology theoretically designed to calm the turbulent weather. In practice, however, it managed to conjure a highly localized thunderstorm directly over the already battered Omnithraxis. Fiesnar, soaked through to his undergarments and thoroughly demoralized, turned to THCK with a look of utter despair. "Sir," he began, his voice barely above a whisper, "I respectfully request permission to file a formal complaint against this planet." "Request denied." THCK roared, his voice tight with frustration, as another lightning bolt zapped away what little remained of their rapidly dwindling dignity. Back on the Omnithraxis, conditions were going from bad to worse. The interior of the ship now resembled a poorly designed water park, with small rivers of rainwater seeping through newly formed cracks in the hull and forming puddles on the command deck. Cliff, the ship's AI and ever the source of unhelpful commentary, chimed in, warning, humidity levels have exceeded optimal parameters for maintaining crew morale. Recommend immediate deployment of dehumidifiers or, alternatively, complete and utter withdrawal from this demonstrably hostile planet. Commander THCK was, understandably, not pleased. "This is a minor setback," he grumbled, pacing the waterlogged command deck, muttering darkly about unacceptable and insubordinate weather. Around him, the crew busied themselves with various tasks, primarily focused on looking occupied enough to avoid attracting the commander's ire. Cliff, seemingly oblivious to the rising tension, cheerfully announced, "Update, atmospheric hostility has escalated to level 5. This is unprecedented. Congratulations." "Congratulations?" THCK roared, sloshing through the ankle-deep water that had accumulated on the bridge. "Who programmed you to be so utterly unhelpful?" "Technically," Cliff replied, "you did." Fiesnar suppressed a chuckle. "Sir," he ventured, "might I suggest a different approach? Perhaps the local inhabitants could offer some insight into the, shall we say, unique behavior of this planet's weather systems?" THCK fixed him with a glare that could melt steel. "Ask the primitives for help? Are you out of your mind?" "Well, sir," Fiesnar responded, gesturing to the dripping walls, the impenetrable fog outside, and the growing puddle beneath THCK's feet, "the alternative is to quite literally drown in our own hubris." Down on the ground, Earl was enjoying a peaceful evening on his porch, sipping sweet tea and watching the flickering lights of the alien ship in the distance. Crumpet snored softly at his feet, blissfully unaware of the interstellar drama unfolding just a few miles away. Earl squinted at the horizon, where another bank of storm clouds seemed to be gathering. "Figures," he muttered to himself. "They ain't learned their lesson yet." His contemplation was interrupted by a faint whirring sound. He looked up just in time to see a Clavian reconnaissance drone descending awkwardly onto his lawn. The drone, a spherical contraption with spindly legs and a single blinking eye, landed with all the grace of a toddler tumbling off a tricycle. Greetings," it intoned in a monotone voice that sounded suspiciously like a disgruntled customer service representative. "We, come in peace." Earl raised an eyebrow. "Is that a question or a statement?" The drone hesitated. "Statement. Definitely a statement." "Right," Earl drawled. "And what do you all want?" There was a long pause, during which the drone appeared to be consulting some sort of internal manual. Finally, it spoke. "Assistance. We require assistance with the weather." Earl let out a bark of laughter. "The weather? You came halfway across the galaxy and got beat up by the *weather*? "That is a reductive interpretation of events," the drone replied, sounding vaguely offended. Earl leaned back in his chair, tipping his hat. "Well, reckon I could help. But it's gonna cost YA." "What is the cost?" Earl grinned. Ain't figured that out yet. But I will. Back on the Omnithraxis, Fiesnar was briefing THCK on the negotiations. He's willing to help, sir, he reported. But he insists we follow his instructions to the letter. THCK folded his arms. And what does this Earl want us to do? Build a birdhouse? A storm shelter, Fiesnar said, barely able to keep a straight face. THCK blinked. A storm shelter? We have interdimensional shielding and plasma arrays that could disintegrate a moon. Why would we waste time on a boom? A lightning bolt struck so close that the bridge lights flickered. Fiesnar coughed. Apparently, sir, the weather really doesn't like us. The Clavian crew, grumbling but desperate, began assembling the storm shelter under Earl's remote supervision. The process was, to put it mildly, chaotic. At one point, two ensigns argued over whether a hammer was a tool or a primitive weapon. Another tried to use a power drill to assemble a torp, which promptly collapsed. Earl watched from his porch, sipping another glass of sweet tea. "You'll ever built something without overthinking it?" he asked the drone hovering beside him. The drone replied, "CLVI engineering does not simplify." "That much is clear," Earl muttered. Back on the Omnithraxis, conditions were rapidly deteriorating. The ship's interior now resembled a poorly designed aquatic recreation center, with trickles of rainwater seeping through cracks in the hull and pooling on the command deck. Cliff, ever the unhelpful AI companion, announced, warning, ambient humidity levels exceed recommended parameters for sustained crew morale. Deploy dehumidifiers or consider a complete and total withdrawal from this demonstrably unfriendly celestial body. Commander THCK, unsurprisingly, was not amused. "This," he grumbled, sloshing through the ankle-deep water accumulating on the bridge, "is a minor inconvenience. A mere hiccup in our otherwise impeccable conquest strategy." Lieutenant Fiesnar, whose faith in THCK's definition of impeccables was rapidly dwindling, hesitated before responding, "Sir, with all due respect, perhaps we should re-evaluate our approach." The indigenous population seemed strangely unfazed by these meteorological events. Indeed, Earl and Crumpet were still out in the cornfield, now comfortably seated beneath a rusty metal awning, watching the Clavians with the detached amusement of observers waiting for paint to dry. Earl, sipping his coffee from a thermos, occasionally muttered things like, "Bet they didn't see that coming," whenever a lightning bolt struck the ship. THCK waved away Fiesnar's suggestion, pacing back and forth as rainwater sloshed beneath his boots. "No re-evaluations. No surrender. We are Clavian. Deploy the subjugation modules." The subjugation modules represented the pinnacle of Clavian engineering. Each module, theoretically, could pacify entire cities by releasing a carefully calibrated mixture of hypnotic pheromones and disorienting light patterns. Unfortunately, they were designed for deployment in stable atmospheric conditions. This, as it turned out, was a significant oversight. As the first module descended into the stormy Kansas sky, it was immediately pummeled by hail, not ordinary hail, mind you, but hail shaped like perfectly aerodynamic spears. "Is that a standard precipitation for this planet?" Fiesnar asked, eyes wide as he stared at the monitor. THCK glared at him. "Do I look like a weather specialist?" The hail intensified into what Cliff helpfully labeled a category for atmospheric tantrum. The module began spinning wildly, its hypnotic light patterns malfunctioning. Instead of pacifying the populace, it attracted every pigeon within a 30-mile radius, creating a chaotic avian mosh pit above the cornfield. The second module fared no better. It was swept up into a conveniently appearing tornado, which seemed to form solely for the purpose of inconveniencing it. "Module 2 has been relocated," Fiesnar reported, his voice laced with panic. "Current coordinates, somewhere over Missouri." Inside the Omnithraxis, the situation continued to unravel. A particularly strong gust of wind tore open a ventilation hatch, allowing a small but determined sparrow to enter the bridge. Attempts to remove the bird devolved into utter chaos, with one ensign chasing it with a broom while another yelled, "It's a local spy. Capture it." Meanwhile, THCK was busy formulating what he insisted was a brilliant contingency plan. "We'll deploy the atmospheric stabilizer," he announced, slamming a fist onto the command console. Fiesnar blinked. "The what now?" THCK scowled. "The atmospheric stabilizer. You know, the device we confiscated from the Zorblonians after their unfortunate weather experiments." Fiesnar's expression turned grave. "Sir, the Zorblonians accidentally created a sentient thundercloud that declared itself emperor of their home world." "Are we certain this is a wise course of action?" "It's a fantastic idea," THCK snapped. "Activate it." The atmospheric stabilizer, a device that looked suspiciously like a blender duct taped to a disco ball, was launched into the heart of the storm. At first, it seemed to work. The rain slowed, the wind softened, and for a fleeting moment, there was an eerie calm. "See?" THCK smirked. "Genius." Then, the calm shattered. The storm didn't just return, it seemed angry. Lightning struck the stabilizer repeatedly, causing it to spin faster and faster until it emitted a low hum that quickly escalated into a high-pitched whine. The crew watched in horror as the device shot back towards the Omnithraxis like an angry boomerang. "Brace for impact!" Fiesnar yelled, clutching a chair. The stabilizer smashed into the ship's hull, embedding itself like an oversized lawn dart. It began to glow ominously, and then, *boom*, exploded in a shower of sparks and confetti. Fiesnar stared at the wreckage. "Why was there confetti?" "It's ceremonial," THCK muttered weakly. Outside, Earl and Crumpet observed the chaos with mild amusement. "Reckon they've had enough yet?" Earl mused, tossing Crumpet the last bite of his sandwich. Crumpet barked in agreement. On board the Omnithraxis, however, THCK was far from admitting defeat. "This planet thinks it can outsmart me," he roared. "Well, it's about to learn the true meaning of Klvian ingenuity." Fiesnar sighed, muttering under his breath, "Oh, great. Here we go again." Commander THCK paced the soaked command deck, muttering darkly about the audacity of insubordinate weather. His crew busied themselves with the appearance of productive activity, primarily to avoid attracting his ire. Cliff, the ship's AI, oblivious to the tension, chirped, "Update, atmospheric hostility has reached level 5. This is unprecedented." "Congratulations." "Congratulations?" THCK roared, sloshing through the ankle-deep water on the bridge. "Who programmed you to be so unhelpful?" "Technically," Cliff replied, "you did." Lieutenant Fiesnar suppressed a chuckle. "Sir," he ventured, "might I propose an alternative strategy? Perhaps the local inhabitants could offer some perspective on the, shall we say, unusual behavior of this planet's weather systems?" THCK fixed him with a glare that could melt glacier. "Consult the natives? Are you insane?" "Well, sir," Fiesnar responded, gesturing to the dripping walls, the impenetrable fog outside, and the expanding puddle beneath THCK's feet, "the alternative is to quite literally drown in our own arrogance." Down on the ground, Earl was enjoying a peaceful evening on his porch, sipping iced tea and observing the flickering lights of the alien vessel in the distance. Crumpet snored softly at his feet, oblivious to the interstellar drama unfolding nearby. Earl squinted at the horizon, where another line of storm clouds was gathering. "Figures," he mumbled to himself. "They ain't figured it out yet." His contemplation was interrupted by a soft whirring sound. He glanced up to see a Klvian reconnaissance drone descending clumsily onto his lawn. The drone, a spherical device with spindly legs and a single blinking light, landed with all the grace of a newborn giraffe. Greetings," it announced in a monotone that sounded suspiciously like a bored telemarketer. "We come in peace." Earl raised an eyebrow. "Is that a question or a statement?" The drone paused. "A statement." "Definitely a statement." "Right," Earl drawled. "And what exactly do you all want?" There was a lengthy pause, during which the drone seemed to be consulting some sort of internal database. Finally, it spoke. "Assistance." We require assistance with the meteorological conditions. Earl let out a hearty laugh. The weather? You came all the way across the galaxy and got whopped by the weather asterisk. That is an oversimplification of the events, the drone replied, sounding mildly insulted. Earl leaned back in his chair, tipping his hat. Well, reckon I can lend a hand. But it's gonna cost YA. What is the cost? The drone inquired. Earl grinned. Ain't quite figured that out yet. But I will. Back on the Omnithraxis, Fiesnar updated THCK on the ongoing negotiations. He's agreeable to assisting us, sir, he reported. However, he insists on our adherence to his instructions, precisely. THCK crossed his arms. And what does this Earl require us to do? Construct a birdhouse? A storm shelter, Fiesnar replied, struggling to maintain a serious expression. THCK blinked. A storm shelter? We possess interdimensional shielding and plasma cannons capable of obliterating a moon. Why would we squander time constructing a boom, a lightning bolt struck so close the bridge lights flickered violently. Fiesnar coughed. Apparently, sir, the weather has a strong aversion to our presence. The Clavian crew, grumbling but resigned to their fate, began assembling the storm shelter under Earl's remote guidance. The process was, to say the least, disorganized. At one point, two ensigns debated whether a hammer qualified as a tool or a primitive bludgeoning weapon. Another attempted to use a power drill to secure a torp, which promptly ripped to shreds. Earl watched from his porch, sipping another glass of iced tea. "You'll ever built anything without overcomplicating it?" he asked the drone hovering nearby. The drone responded, "CLVI engineering does not simplify." "That's abundantly clear," Earl muttered. As the storm shelter neared completion, something unexpected occurred. The storm above began to dissipate. The lightning ceased, the wind calmed, and for the first time in days, the Omnithraxis stopped leaking. Fiesnar looked at THCK, who appeared genuinely perplexed. "It's almost as if the storm respects the effort," Fiesnar said, trying not to sound smug. "Nonsense," THCK growled. "Pure coincidence. A fluke. An anomaly." But as the crew finished the shelter, albeit haphazardly with half the roof missing, something even more extraordinary happened. A rainbow appeared overhead, arching across the now clear sky. The crew stared at it in awe. Fiesnar broke the silence. "Sir, permission to interpret this as a sign of success?" THCK scowled, but didn't object. Back on his porch, Earl watched the rainbow with a satisfied grin. "You know, Crumpet," he said, scratching the dog behind the ears, "I think we just taught some aliens the value of hard work." Crumpet wagged his tail, although it was unclear whether he agreed or was just happy about the leftover sandwich Earl handed him.